All right. Well, good morning. It's good to see people here today. Good to see Jack and Joyce back after long Shipshawana sampling. Right?
Somebody had to do it.
Might as well be you, right? All right. And good to see Larry and Helen back as well. So it's nice when we see people leave and then come back, and for somber reasons, to see them back is a joy. And it's nice to, whether they're struggling or they're just trying to relax from their relaxation vacations or whatever it might be, it's good to have them back in the family and experience time with them, fellowship with them. So we're going to start today with the thought from above, and hopefully not crackle everywhere. So, thought from above is, every decision has a crossroads. Honor God or honor me. So it's like a personal decision. One way leads to joy, and the other leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. And it will always leave a bitter taste in your mouth eventually. Because even if we choose the me, and for all the pleasure and the joy we get out of that joy, eventually it comes back to bite us, right? And it leaves that bitter taste. So today's message is called Salt. Tasty treasure or disappointing deposit. And I really wanted to do a double letter thing, so deposit like mineral deposit, okay? I hope that's, if I feel like if I have to explain it, it's probably not very witty, and it's probably not very good. But I'm going to do it anyway because I'm a dad, and that's what I do. So, yeah, and Damian totally agrees, right? So, I'm going to skip around to that. Oh, so why do I say salt? I meant to put the verse here, but we're going to jump to it anyway after this, so that's fine. Salt is valuable. Salt is a valuable thing. The ancient Romans, many historians will discuss that, and some people will argue whether this happens. It seems like most agree that it is a thing. Ancient historians would often pay a salarium, or where we get our word salary, and they would use that. And some of that, some would say that they would pay with a little bit of salt as part of the payment, and some would say that they would use that salt or that money oftentimes to get the salt because the salt was so important. Either way, it shows that there is a lot of value in salt. Salt was a very important commodity in that ancient times. It's important now, but not nearly like it was before. Before, it would basically be life and death. It's actually where we get that term, someone who's worth their salt. Okay? So if you're worth your salt, you're very good at your job. You're very good at whatever it is you're trying to do. This thing is going to bug me to no end today. That's all right. Oh, I can't decide which way to go with it. I don't know. I'll let him. He's probably back there working his butt off trying to move things around because I keep shifting this thing. I'm going to try not to touch it, okay? I'll try. I will try. So let's go to the passage that I was going to work with today. Matthew chapter 5. We're going to look at 13 through 16. So starting in 13. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. In verse 14, you are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that you may see the good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Now there's similarities between the two. There's two metaphors being used, one for salt, one for light, right? And I'm not going to focus on the light. I know that actually, insider information, I know Brett has been thinking about doing something with light for quite a while. I know he's got something brewing in his head, and that doesn't mean you have to do it next, but it's coming, and now I've made it apparent to everyone, so it has to happen. But I'm going to focus on the salt aspect today. Oh, goodness. It moved. Okay, now maybe now it'll stay. So I'm going to focus on the salt thing. But notice that it combines the two. These verses come right after each other, okay? So we've got the salt of the earth, and then we have light of the world. So we have the salt of the earth. If it's lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? So if it no longer is doing the thing that it was supposed to do, what good is it? It's not worth anything. We'll just throw it on the ground and trample it. It's worthless at that point. If you're the light of the world, and you put your light underneath something, it's now useless again, right? Again, we are not utilizing what we have. So, in the same way, let your light shine to others. So you could say also, in the same way, let your salt be salty. Let your salt have its effect. And some people take that and they say, well, Jesus said to be salt, so we're going to move this meme when you told them to be salt of the earth, but they chose to be salty to everyone on earth instead. And a lot of churches today, this is them, right? This could be us in certain places. When you're that salty person, you're always angry. That's not the kind of salt that was intended. That is not the salt that has saltiness. That is the salt that makes a bitter taste, and it's worth getting thrown on the ground and trampled, okay? So salt is valuable, but why is salt valuable? So we're going to go into practical things for salt, okay? And then we'll come back. So salt preserves. I've got 3 things that I want to go over. You could probably make a list of 400 things. I'm going to say it's 3, okay? So 3 things that salt does. Salt preserves, okay? How does it preserve? It kills bacteria. With a high quantity of salt, with enough salt, you can kill bacteria on your foods, even things that aren't food. You can kill bacteria. Salt also draws moisture from food. It pulls that moisture out, and again, will make it so that bacteria does nothing to feed on. Bacteria needs water. It needs moisture. And when you pull that moisture out with the salt, the bacteria dies. If you've ever dry aged or where they put like salt around a whole bunch of stuff and then they let it sit in the fridge for a month and it's the most amazing steak that you've ever had, things like that. That's them drawing all that moisture out and then letting all those flavors kind of do their thing. It also purifies water in the same way. You put that salt in there, it kills off the bacteria, it kind of sifts things through. It gets rid of some of the illness that is associated with water. And then it also healing and cleansing. So how many of you would put your feet into like Epsom salt, to try because it's aching, it hurts? Or what? Or whole body. Yeah, you stick your whole body in there sometimes. Yeah. If it's been a really hard day, driving, climbing up on top of ladders and such, and doing roofing or messing with electrical that's way up here. Yeah, you probably are hurting and you want something to help relax you a little bit. So it's really good at healing that. It's also good for healing wounds. You're out in the middle of nowhere and you got all this pain and you don't know what to do. You got this giant gash in your leg. You could salt it. If you have a lot of salt, that would work in cleansing that wound, at least killing off, again, all that bacteria, right? Because that bacteria decays. So what you're essentially doing with the salt to preserve is to slow down the decay that's occurring in that food. So secondly, why is salt valuable? Salt's valuable because it regulates. It can modify the environment. Putting salt into water will raise its boiling point. It changes the point at which it will start its boiling process. It melts snow. We do that all the time, right? We throw that salt out on the snow and it melts it down, right? We can change the environment because we take that salt and we spread it around. We change the environment because of the salt. It can be used to maintain hydration. So you need salt in your body. Okay, salt is necessary for you to have the right amount of water. If you don't have enough salt, the water just kind of goes through you. Okay, your body doesn't hold on to it like it needs to. You need that salt in order to be properly hydrated. If you're going out and you're doing a bunch of work out in the heat, you need lots of water. But you also need lots of salt because salt is an electrolyte. Salt allows water and your muscles to do what they need to do. Your body needs the right amount of water, it needs the right amount of salt. In fact, as an electrolyte, there are multiple electrolytes, magnesium, potassium, sodium, which is what we usually consider salt. and then calcium are all used for your muscles. Without one of those things, your muscle will not function. Okay? Oftentimes, if you're just sitting there and your muscle just starts doing this number, that's usually an indicator that you're deficient in something. And a little bit of salt might actually make that stop. Okay? You need that salt. Every time your muscle does something, you're using salt. If you lift your arm up, you're using salt. If you blink your eye, you're using salt. Your body needs salt in order to properly function. You need that electrolyte to move, to do anything. So salt can regulate. And now the one that we all enjoy, salt flavors. One of the wonderful things about salt, if you are someone who likes to cook particularly, Brad over there is smiling because it's his most favorite thing in the whole world is salt. He will salt for food, I think. Salt enhances the flavor that it's in. If you take salt and you put it on a food, that food's flavor gets stronger. That salt makes your body focus on that flavor. It's almost like it just says, hey, remember this right here? Oh, yeah, that's really good, right? And we enjoy that saltiness. And if it doesn't have any salt in it, and I apologize for those of you who can't have very much salt. I know it's rough. Okay, it's rough. But that salt is kind of necessary to really enjoy your food sometimes. Salt can also be used to curb a sweet tooth. Now, this is kind of part of a regulation thing as well, but when I was doing keto, which I loved, when I was doing keto, I went really low on sugar. So I would have cravings sometimes that I really needed some sugar. Okay, and I was like, oh, I just got to have that candy. You keep that stuff away from me because I will pick and I do that now. But when I was doing the keto, it was really important. So I didn't ruin my keto stuff. But what's amazing is that if you have that, you're like, oh man, I just really want something sweet. What I would find is I'd come home from work and grab some salt, put a pinch of salt in my mouth, wait about 2 minutes, and I don't really need that sugar anymore. You can take that sweet tooth and go, oh, I guess I didn't need that. It's almost like it tricks the body. It tells the body, you don't really need the sugar. Sometimes that sweet tooth is an indication that you're not getting enough salt. Now, that does not mean that if you are craving sugar to go and consume a bunch of salt, but it can help. Brett, don't. It can help. So it curbs a sweet tooth. And then also from a flavoring standpoint, it makes you thirsty. And I put this in flavoring because we often combine the idea of food and drink together, right? It's like it's part of our food, right? If we're going to eat dinner, oftentimes we have a drink of some kind. It could be water, but food makes you thirsty. In fact, if you eat a lot of fast food, you find out that food really makes you thirsty, and then they get you to get another drink. Well, then that drink is actually not good for you, and it makes you thirstier and hungrier. It's a whole cycle. But salt will make you thirsty, and that's actually can be a good thing because the salt making you thirsty means I need more water. It makes you, okay, I need to actually drink some more water. It actually could be good in regulating your body back, but also I feel like it makes the water taste better because you really want it. So to me, from a flavoring standpoint, it making you thirsty can be a really good thing in regards to food. And it's going to come back later too as a really important aspect of this little study. So I'm going to move on to another passage. We'll come back to this, but we're going to move to another passage in Colossians chapter 4, verses 5 through 6. Conduct yourselves with wisdom toward outsiders, making the most of the opportunity. Let your speech always be with grace, as though seasoned with salt, so that you will know how you should respond to each person. Now, when I was reading this and I was trying to break it down a little bit, if you were to see the blueprint of my thought process on it, it would be like one of those football diagrams where you see lines all over the place, or little basketball play, and there's just lines moving all over the place, because so much of this goes back and references each other. Like if you really think about it, it's like, oh, that means that has to do with this, that has to do with this. So let's look at that for just a moment here. So conduct yourselves with wisdom toward outsiders, making the most of the opportunity. So the whole point is you have an opportunity, right? You have a chance to do something. And what does that have to do with? Outsiders, the unbelievers. You have a chance to influence unbelievers. Well, in what way? Well, how we conduct ourselves. We conduct ourselves with wisdom. We don't just jump into things. We think about what we're doing. We use the word to decide how we're going to respond. So we make the most of our opportunities with outsiders by showing through our conduct wisdom. And what does that wisdom look like? Let your speech always be with grace, as though seasoned with salt. You could replace that, because of how it does it, let your speech always be seasoned with salt. Now, what does the seasoning look like? It looks like grace. It's taking what you have been given by Christ and showing that to everyone else. And it doesn't just say doing, it says your speech as well. So your speech, how you speak to people, how you speak around people, is deciding what kind of salt you have, whether your salt is effective, so that you will know how you should respond to each person, how you to respond to each unbeliever. Because if your life, if your conduct is salty, people will respond, and they'll want to know what's going on, and then you will respond in word with salt. It does a whole lot of back and forth and back and forth. It does a lot of circling. But the more you think about it, the more you see that like how I respond is important, and how I say things is important, and how I live my life is important. These are things that are important. Why? Because we have a commission to find unbelievers and make disciples. And those disciples are not going to be made if our conduct and our salt has lost its saltiness. Now, I said before that salt preserves, regulates, and flavors. But just like it said in the last one, or just like it said in the previous verse before that, that we are the salt of the earth, let's replace the idea of salt with Christians. So a Christian does three things as salt. A Christian preserves. It preserves society and culture. This is like the moral life of our society, the moral view of our culture. As a preservative, it slows the decay. It takes these things that should be, and it says, these are important. We should do these things. It's important for our moral virtue. We have to do these things in order to be right. And it slows the decay by getting rid of the bacteria, the concepts out there that are evil, that are sinful. We get rid of them through our moral standing. We cleanse the rot that is currently so big in our society right now. The rot that's just so pervasive in our culture. It's not just our country, it's not just our world, it's the cultures within that world. The things that, quite frankly, the church has just walked away from in many respects. Just walked away from it. Just said, oh, okay, we'll let you do your thing. Well, now they're rotting because we left. They're rotting because we aren't there to influence them anymore. They're rotting because there's no salt there and they're just dying. And we need to be there to slow the decay of our society and our culture. Next, Christians regulate. As salt, Christians regulate. Laws and leaders. The Christian can change the ethic of the world, the place that they live in, right? They can change the rules. They can change the way that people will be told they have to do things, right? There are laws and there are leaders put in place to make those laws, and we can modify the environment just like salt was able to modify the environment of water that it's in, ice that it's around. We can modify the place that we live in.
One other word that you could use for the word laws, leaders, and language.
Actually, yeah, if you were making it an official thing, like this is how you shall speak.
Yeah. We change our language where you're no longer this with us.
Right. We change our words, and so now the words are officially, like, what is fascism now to what it was 10 years ago? The definitions have changed. Okay? What is a man or a woman? The definitions have changed. Those are societal, but they've also become legal, right? So we change the environment. The rules that we're going to live by are modified by how we respond. And once again, the church, the people of God, have backed away. They've allowed people to say separation of church and state means you can't say anything. No, that's not what that means. It was supposed to protect religious activity, not force religious activity away from everyone. The laws of this land, the Constitution itself, was built off of Judeo-Christian values, okay, Judeo-Christian beliefs. They used the things that are in the Bible to decide these kinds of things. Even people who weren't believers, they weren't all believers, but they recognized how important those rules and laws were. And we have the opportunity to do similar things, because every time we have an election, every time there's a school board vote, every time we have those things, we should be there as Christians, as the salt, regulating our environment. We decide who is going to be put in what positions. When I read that before the election there were going to be 30 to 50 million Christians were not going to vote. That was what was coming out, like 30 to 50 million. And that if those 30 to 50 million voted, there'd be no chance. Like it would decide exactly where everything would go. If we as Christians actually used what our laws, our regulations allowed us as the law of the land, we would put good, godly men and women in positions of leadership in our country. We would put good and godly laws on the books, like getting rid of Roe versus Wade, getting rid of that the right to an abortion, the right to kill. We can get rid of that by putting good and honorable, godly people, or good and honorable, maybe not godly in the way that they live. They don't identify as a Christian, but their lifestyle is not going to destroy everything around them. It's not intended to destroy. Someone who very well may be a Christian at some point because of how they live, like, oh, they're on the right path. Or their values are actually not going to kill everything around us. We want to move our way that direction. So if you have the opportunity to regulate your environment, please do so. You know, we just had an election. There's going to be another election. There's going to be another vote. There's going to be another opportunity. There's going to be another chance for you to stand up and help make the laws of this land and put people in power. Use that opportunity. Know what you're doing first, okay? Learn something about the people and the laws, and then act. So many times, laws of like Columbia City, just here, go through and nobody knows about it. Melanie has found some amazing things that go through and get passed, and they're just like, it was so quiet. No one was paying attention. Why did we allow that? We've effectively removed ourselves from the laws. We've allowed the lie of unbelieving world to say, you're supposed to stay away from all of that. You're supposed to be out of it. We're not supposed to be out of the world. We're supposed to be in the world. We're supposed to be in there regulating things. And if we're removed, it's just going to fall apart. It's going to decay. It's going to die. I don't believe that anymore. Flavoring. The Christian flavors, just like salt does. As Christians, we have an opportunity to give the taste of holiness to the world, okay? The world is bitter. And sin makes it really hard to swallow. Sin makes life hard to swallow. But for the Christian, for the believer, as salt, we can show what holiness looks like, being set apart, being separate from that sin. As believers, people can look at us and go, there's something different about them. Those things that they keep believing, they keep saying, kind of maybe if we follow that, we wouldn't be in X position right now. When they deal with issues, they don't deal with it like we do. It's not the end of the world to them. They move forward. Someone passes, one of their believing friends pass, and why are they smiling? They're joyful. Oh, their friend died. Why would that be? That wouldn't be good. That wouldn't be fun. Well, my friend went to heaven. My family member went to heaven. Yes, I'm sad, but I'm happy for them. They get to go be with the Lord. That's awesome. They don't have that. They don't understand what it's like to live a life that is holy, that is separate, that says, I am a sinner and I need to move toward holiness by separating out these things that are damaging, that are bacteria, that are breaking things down, that are eroding my life. And just like salt makes us thirsty for some water, we as salt, as Christians, can make the world thirsty for the living water that Christ says he is. By seeing our lives, by seeing us respond to things, by seeing us care. Like, you act as my enemy, but when something bad happened, I cared for you. And they go, what's that about? And we explain it to them, they go, oh, so you care because Jesus cares. So what does that mean? And the more they hear, the more they want, the more they desire, the thirstier they get. So we get to be the one that causes that thirst to increase. They're already thirsty for it. They don't realize how thirsty they are until we put it in perspective. But we have the opportunity to increase that thirst and make disciples and fulfill our commission. So we can give a taste of holiness by loving God with all of our heart, soul, and mind, and we can cause a thirst for living water by loving other people. It's not a perfect metaphor in that if you take salt and you're like, well, salt also does all these other things. Yes, I get it. Salt is not, what's the point? What was the context? The context is salt has these effects. Salt has these good things, these things that it can cause. You need to remember that you are supposed to be doing those same things. And just like salt has bad things, like it causes blood pressure to rise, if you are not a good salt, you're going to cause blood pressure to rise. If you're salty toward the world, like that meme says, blood pressure will rise. Not in a good way. Don't be part of the erosion. Be part of the fix. I'm going to go ahead and cut. Wow, this is earlier than normal. Look at me. I got it in there. 35. Look at that. Let's go ahead and pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for your word and that you are willing to speak to us. You're willing to be hard on us sometimes. You're willing to explain things to us in ways that we don't understand until the 100th time that we read it. Thank you for explaining things like salt, explaining how we should go about. You didn't just give us commission and then just leave us on our own. You told us what to do. I pray, Lord, that those who hear this message would be convicted, that those who are believers would become salty to the world in the way that brings them to repentance, shows them what it is to be right with God, ultimately makes disciples and brings more people to your family. Thank you for making us thirsty to begin with. Thank you that you choose us ahead of time. You have decided that we are worth going after. Thank you for giving us your Holy Spirit. Thank you so much for guiding us. I pray, Lord, that you would be with us the rest of this day and give us opportunities to be salt in the world even today, with our interactions at the store, with other members around town. And I pray that going forward also from a society standpoint, Lord, I pray that we would be salt to those who need you. Thank you again for your word. Thank you again for Jesus' blood. I pray this in Jesus Christ's holy name. Amen. All right. Enjoy some fellowship.